Welcome to Rider Nation Station, presented by American Manufacturing Solutions, your total logistics partner, investing in Rider Nation Station and St. Mary's, Ohio, and to our other fine sponsors. Welcome to Rider Nation Station, presented by American Manufacturing Solutions, your total logistics partner, investing in Rider Nation Station and St. Mary's, Ohio, and to our other fine sponsors. A familiar landmark upon arrival to the St. Mary's Corporation limits is the yellow signage that chronologically denotes that St. Mary's is a city of champions. Most recently, in 2019, St. Mary's' high school bowlers, both boys and girls, as well as the girls' powerlifting team, secured their spot on the all-familiar signpost. Most remember the 4 football team championships. However, as powerful as football was and is, the St. Mary's Gridiron personnel did not present the Rough Riders with its first state championship. That duty and honor fell to a gymnast who first participated in high school gymnastics her junior year, which is the same year she became a state champion. That gymnast is a Rider Nation Station founder and sponsor, and the best sister I have ever had. Welcome, Laura Yelton.
It's good to be here.
So, you kind of had a long path getting to that state championship in 1977. You didn't first start off as a gymnast, you first started off as a dancer. And you evolved into becoming an acrobat. Is this correct?
That is very correct. I believe I was 4 maybe when Mom put me in dance with Mava, which it was above the bungalow here in St. Mary's, where Mava first, or maybe that wasn't her first spot, but that's where I took dance. And I believe it was on the advice of some doctors because I had terrible allergies and asthma, and they said, keep her active, keep her busy. And that is how I got into dance.
And I think Mava's somewhere around 60 years of dance.
Yes. I believe there's coming up in the fall, a project for former dancers of Mava that we can participate in.
Well, hopefully we get to see you on the stage again.
Hopefully so.
How did dance with Mava prepare you to become an acrobat and eventually a gymnast?
Well, I believe I was one of Mava's first pupils. I was in her first wave of students, and she was a strict disciplinarian as far as dance went. She was very strong in ballet, and I believe that helped me very greatly to succeed as a gymnast since I started gymnastics at a very late age. I believe I was 11. And so that dance background and the acrobatic background, which was helped transition but was very different from gymnastics and techniques and so forth. But that early strict dance background has really helped me.
Well, it must have been recognized at a very early age because you were requested to perform in a lot of shows and variety type talent shows, etc. And I remember seeing one letter that the lady saying from Fort Wayne, make certain that you don't accept money to keep your amateur status. What do you remember about those shows and what you performed?
I remember that half the time I never knew that I was going to go perform until Mom said, come on, we're going to here, Ada, or you're dancing at the VA. So I guess maybe that was good. I didn't have time to get nervous. I also remember that Mava tried to come up with very unique, different things. One time I was on a table with pedestals and I did a back bend and picked up a handkerchief. And another time I had a pole, and I don't know if it was 6 feet up, but I shimmied up the pole and there was a platform on the top and I did a headstand up there. So essentially I was like way up there. So she was always very creative and innovative in the things that I performed at the variety shows or the talent shows.
So it must have been a crowd pleaser because I found in an April 7th, 1970 Evening Leader, there's an article written about your upcoming appearance in the National Variety Show in Lima, and the corresponding picture was titled, Billed as the Acrobatic Wonder. So you talked a little bit about the stunts that you did, and I think I've seen some of the pictures of what you just talked about. But did you do anything beyond that you got you that moniker of the acrobatic wonder?
I have no idea where that came from. Back in that day, there wasn't as many opportunities, not nearly as many opportunities for girls to do things. There was some dance, but not like it is today. The sports weren't there like they are today. So I guess, they found something and ran with it.
Yep. Did you have to travel? You mentioned Ada and Lima, and I think I saw the letter from Fort Wayne. Was it just kind of, close within an hour range, or were you traveling quite a distance doing these variety shows?
I don't completely remember, but I know that I performed at VA hospitals a lot as well. And I remember going to Cincinnati and Dayton. I believe one time I was at the Indiana State Fair and the Ohio State Fair for different either talent shows or performances. So, nothing was really far, but within an hour or two, I believe.
Do you remember winning anything?
Yes. I know I won the Ada talent show once or twice. I used to have a ton of trophies.
Big trophies?
Yeah, huge trophies, and most of those perished. We had a house fire on Christmas Eve of '99, and most all of that stuff perished. So I just don't remember a lot of it, and it's gone.
Yeah. At what age did you decide to transition from what you had been doing with dance and acrobatics to gymnastics?
Once again, that was a Mava influence. She took myself and her daughter, I believe it was Kim, to a gymnastics camp it happened to be at Eastern Michigan University. And I was 10 or 11. And at that time there was a show that you could perform in, and it was mostly gymnasts, but Mava had me do my acrobatic routine. It was called A Night of Stars or something like that. And if I remember correctly, somebody there thought that I had talent and should maybe go into gymnastics. So when we got home, Mava talked to my mom and said, they really think she would probably be a good gymnast. And thus began that part of my life. And it first began at the Dayton, Ohio YMCA.
And what type of time commitment? Obviously, you've got an hour plus drive to get to the Dayton Y. But what type of time commitment during the week and then on weekends did you have as you first were at the Dayton Y and then it transitioned later to the Miamisburg Twigs Club?
Correct. I believe probably the Dayton Y, I was there 3 times a week probably. And then, meets wherever they were, of course, were generally 2-day affairs. And the evening practices, I'm going to say, were anywhere from 3 to 4 hours.
And that's during the school year as well?
Yes, during the school year, yep.
So homework on the way down, homework on the way back, and...
Fortunately, I could read in the car, I could do things in the car, and I also was much more disciplined in those early days than I am now. And I would get things done immediately. I would use my time wisely. I don't know where that trait went, but I would like to have it back.
Do you remember having kind of some instant success once you transitioned into gymnastics, or did it take time to evolve?
I believe I had some instant success. I can't remember a whole lot about it, but I think things went very well right from the get-go. Though, funny story, my very first gymnastics meet that I was ever going to perform in, I don't know where it was, probably Dayton, and I had gotten stung by a wasp, and we learned from that I was highly allergic to those. I had a hand, those doctor's gloves that you blow up, that's what my hand looked like, and my whole entire arm was massive. So I had to miss my very first gymnastics meet because I had that wasp sting.
A minor setback, but lots of gymnastic meets ahead of you that you're going to perform and perform well. Did you have Olympic aspirations?
So I'm not sure that I did, but after you keep hearing it a little bit and people keep saying, are you going to the Olympics? And I was a very meek and mild and shy person growing up, then I just went with it and said, yeah, that's what I'd like to do. We founded, our mother recently passed away, and so found an article in one of the bins of articles that she had that I had never seen before. And it was done when I was maybe 12 years old, and it was basically talking to my mother. There was very little of talking with me about, going to the Olympics. So I think that's just what I thought was expected of me, and so then I would just say, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do.
And if I recall correctly, or through whatever legend or lore I have in my mind, that you traveled to the West Coast to perhaps be considered for the Olympics, or am I off base on that?
No, I think you're off base. So I was in the West Coast for nationals and different competitions and different clinics and what have you.
Okay.
But no, I never made it that far. I stopped before any of that could happen.
Okay. Then you're in the private club and you're traveling 3-4 days during the week and then weekends to Dayton. Then you've got the meets. At what point in time did you say, you know what, maybe I need to stop doing the private club and be a high schooler and participate in gymnastics with my high school peers? When did that occur, and was that a difficult decision for you to make?
Not really. So I had gone from the Dayton Y to a club called Twigs, which meant True Winners in God's Service. It was a wonderful program, and still talk to some of the girls from there today. And actually from the Dayton Y, I believe I went to Columbus for a time, because in the summers I lived with my Uncle Beeve, who you mentioned on another broadcast. I lived with him and his family. He had 3 daughters. And then when I ended up going to Twigs, I lived in the summers or sometimes on weekends with families there. So until I could start driving, and then I actually drove myself from St. Mary's to practice as soon as I could do that. And then back to the actual question then, there comes a time in a gymnast's life where, boom, you start going through puberty. And for me, it happened at about the age of 17. And at that time, bodily changes and what have you, it just was time. It was just time to let it go. And I wasn't sure if I was even going to do high school. I just was kind of ready to be done. But then I was like, I think I have a little left. And I'd only began at 11. So, which is, like I said earlier, very late for a gymnast. And so I remember walking into the high school auditorium one day after school, and I had my leotard, and it was just bundled up. And once again, I was very shy. And so I'm just standing up there, very unsure of what to do. Should I go down there? Should I say I would like to join the team? What should I do? And Mary Lou Bombauer, thank goodness, saw me and took pity on me, and she came up and got me, and she said, do you want to be a part of this? And I said, I think so. So that's when it happened, my junior year.
Excellent. Let's talk specific events. What's your favorite event?
Oh, my favorite event by far was balance beam, which I believe I took second on in state once or both years. I never got the winning score, but balance beam was definitely my very favorite event.
Then the least favorite?
Would be uneven bars.
Scariest event?
Probably for me, uneven bars. At the time, the bars were really wide. They're nothing. The equipment is, I would love to be a gymnast today. Just would love to, with all the advancements and all the drills and all of the wonderful setups in the gym. We were basically guinea pigs. If you had any affinity for doing something, you were just throwing it, So a lot of crash and burns and a lot of head landings. what have you. But so I would say in even bars, they were just so wide, and my hands are not very big, and I just had trouble with them. Now today's uneven bars and the way they are, I would have loved, because I swung a mean high bar at the Dayton Y. It just wasn't an event for women.
All righty, so we're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to come back with This Day in History, and then talk specifically with Laura Yelton about the state meet when she becomes Memorial High School's first state champion. We'll be right back after this.
This segment of tonight's broadcast has been brought to you by Minster Bank, helping people achieve financial success in support of the Rider Nation and the St. Mary's community. The Evening Leader, chronicling the history of St. Mary's for over 100 years. And like a good neighbor, Laura Yelton, your local State Farm agent, is there.
This Day in History, May 14th, 1978 is our day. However, that was a Sunday. So we're going to combine May 13th and May 15th for today's episode of This Day in St. Mary's History. The Blueprint takes top award in the Toledo Media Competition. The Blueprint, Memorial High School's newspaper, was recognized as the best overall newspaper in Division A. They won 6 other awards. John Fortman, first place sports writing on Milton Union Invitational Wrestling Tournament. Pam Kraft, third place for coverage on the Blizzard. Deb Simon, third place for her column, Simon Says, a humorous column. John Core, honorable mention, best feature photo. And Laura Spencer, honorable mention, sports writing. Do you remember Simon Says?
I do remember Simon Says.
Was it funny?
Yes. Deb is a very witty person.
Keith sets school high hurdles record. That would be Ronnie Keith, ran 14.9 in the first heat, just missing Greg Startz's school record of 14.8, but then was clocked at 14.7 in the semifinals. Also, Church of Christ will build new church in 4.5 days. Sunday afternoon, 50 men from Carmel Christian Church of Decatur, Georgia, will fly to Dayton Airport, shuttle to St. Mary's, and construct this church, which is located off of 33A. Not only will they build, but they will also cover the cost of anything that exceeds $20,000 estimate. 4.5 days.
Amazing.
Sticking with church, Wayne Street United Methodist Church to get a new pastor. H. Hoyt Brown from White House Hope United Methodist Church will be the new pastor to replace Reverend Richard P. Code, who is retiring. And finally, the Kiwanis Travelogue presents The People of Spain at the Memorial High School Auditorium, May 16th at 7:30 p.m. I remember attending a couple of those travelogues to learn about other countries. This Day in History, thank you to the following sponsors for helping bring This Day in History to us: Laura Yelton State Farm, Mr. Bank, and the Evening Leader. Okay, Laura, so Coach Bambauer says, do you want to be part of the team? And you're on the team with lots of experience. How does a gymnastics meet work? Is there just 5 girls that compete in every event? Talk to us about how that all works in gymnastics.
You know, I would love to give you some specifics, but I just don't remember how many competed per event in high school.
But not everybody had to compete in all the events, did they?
No. So there could be some of us that did all around, and others that might just have done vault, for instance, or might have just done floor exercise, for instance. So I'm going to say probably 6 or 8 per event, but I just don't remember.
Okay. Did the regular season meet your expectations as a high school gymnast as you're transitioning from private to high school?
I think it was just so much more relaxed than private club gymnastics. I mean, it was intense. The practices were long. They were fun enough, but I wouldn't say fun. Being with the girls was fun, and traveling to the meets and competing was fun. But to perform high-level skills, you know, concentration and intensity had to be there. So I remember high school was much more relaxed. I also remember that I think our practices maybe were, they were following school, and they were maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. But I also know that I stayed longer because in order to keep some of my skills, I needed more repetition and I needed more. So, and I didn't go anywhere else. Once I left the gym in Dayton or Miamisburg, I didn't really go anywhere else to train. It was just at the high school. So.
And home base for the high school was in the auditorium.
It was
on
in
the
the
stage?
auditorium on the stage. Every day you got the equipment out, and every day you put the equipment away. So half our practice, I think, was that,
Yeah.
to getting stuff out and putting it back away.
So I read in the Evening Leader that you had won the Shawnee Invitational, which was right before the upcoming districts. The paper said that you won the floor, the ball, the bars, the vault, and the balance beam. Compulsory and optional routines were used to reach final total points. I don't understand what that means. What does that mean?
Okay, so everyone had to do a compulsory routine, which means that everybody had to perform the same routine. It was mandatory or compulsory. So the judges had to judge everybody doing the same routine. Okay. And then the optional are the ones that you make up, that you put your skills into. And there were requirements for each routine. So you had 2 different sets of routines.
Okay. And gymnastic meets probably had to take a decent amount of time, right?
Yes, they were quite long.
Were they always on a Saturday, or were they during the school week as well?
That's a great question, because I don't remember. I think they were during the school week as well. And I don't know that we always had to do compulsories for regular meets.
Okay.
Maybe when we got into the invitationals and districts, I will have to look that up, or maybe Mrs. Bambauer remembers, or somebody else remembers, but I don't.
So you sweep at the Shawnee Invitational, and then the very next week is the Northwest District, which I can't remember the sequence, but it ends up being back at Shawnee, the districts, but it had 2 other venue changes before it makes it back to Shawnee, I read.
Huh.
I think one was going to be Toledo, and I can't remember the second one, but it ends up back at Shawnee. And this is where you qualify for state, which obviously you did. What do you remember about districts, if anything, and how you performed?
I remember that I believe it was a very good meet for me. I felt good, and the equipment was good, and probably a little familiarity since we had just been there. And I believe it was at that meet at districts, or maybe it was at the meet before, where I performed a vault that was just coming into, even the national competitors, called a Sukahara, and landed on my feet, and it was very joyous. I even believe I had my best bar routine at maybe districts, but I believe as I was dismounting, the bars, they had these tension straps, and one of them came loose. It did not affect me, but it was a little interesting as you're hitting the ground and watching the bars kind of collapse. But
glad that all went well. So you do advance to state. You're not the first gymnast to make it to state.
No, a classmate of mine, Missy Dammeier, went to state when Mickey Urich, who just passed away, such a wonderful lady, wish I had half her energy,
Yep.
Just a remarkable woman. And when Mickey Urich was the coach, so Missy went to state in the floor exercise her freshman year.
So now you're going to Otterbein College, and you're competing all around, and you've got high expectations. I would have to believe that you've got the training through the Dayton Y, through the Twigs, locally, regionally, nationally, and now you're at the state meet. The lights are on. A decent amount of people, from what I saw on the OHSAA website. I think I said it was a little over 1,200 people that were there. What was your expectation to win it all?
Oh, I thought I had a good shot to win it all, but you also have to remember that a lot of the girls from Private Club, who also competed regionally and nationally, we were kind of a group, they also went high school. Because at that time you could actually do both. And, I left the private gym club and then, all of that, but some of them didn't. So I was competing against some of those same girls that I competed, nationally against. So I had a good shot at winning, but I didn't.
But the competition was top notch.
It was pretty top notch.
So one thing that I read was that you didn't perform as well as you had in the past and maybe as was expected, but you were not feeling the best. And now I'm starting to, many years later think, okay, was I the culprit of you not winning all around state? Because in the newspaper it said that the flu bug had been going through the Charles Spencer family and you were catching the tail end of it because it had worked its way through everybody else. So hopefully I wasn't the one who started it all.
Well, it doesn't matter if you did.
Okay. I'll sleep better.
Yeah. I did have the flu both days, so it was a struggle, but made it through. Performed well enough to get 6th all around and win a state championship and get 2nd on balance beam. And but the thing is, I believe, I walked out of there feeling like a failure because I think everybody else's expectations were quite high. There was no fanfare. There was really no mention of the state championship in floor exercise in the yearbook. There was no parade through town. In fact, my name wasn't even up on that sign for maybe 5-6 years after it was put up. There was just absolutely no fanfare, and I didn't think anything of it either because I was disappointed as well. And I remember one day, Mr. Albert, K. Albert, who was maybe the athletic director at that time, he comes into a classroom and he says, "Hey, we need you for a photo." And I said, "A photo?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're doing a state championship plaque for you." And I was just baffled because I was like, that really, I really didn't do very well, So.
You didn't do very well other than winning a state championship in the floor and 6th overall.
Yeah.
Well, 42 years later, maybe we can get you that fire truck that leads you into town. Recreate it.
That would be completely embarrassing.
I read with interest that apparently there was some controversy during the state meet on the vault. And the paper, it was well written, and it's a lot of fun. And thank you so much to the Evening Leader and Gail Mason-Brink for allowing me to dig into their archives to find a lot of this information for the vodcast. But it was so well written, and it was like I was there as, and I forget her name, it was a female sports writer, said that you did 2 vaults, 2 different vaults. And the paper indicated that your round-off back aerial, which is the Sukahara, which was just coming into play in high school gymnastics, said it was a crowd pleaser, but not a judge pleaser. And Coach Bombauer actually went and protested that they only judged the first vault, which was a Yamashita. And they said, we just think the Yamashita's better, and that's the only one that we're judging. So there was some controversy, and it sounds like, a lot of people that were watching, not just St. Marian's as recorded in the newspaper, were in shock and awe of what they just saw with the Sakahara and how the score turned out. How things went down.
I had totally forgotten about that, and honestly, that's the event I probably should have won because nobody else was doing that vault, and I don't know why the judges, maybe they hadn't seen one before, because they weren't, like I said, they were just coming into prevalence nationally for the national vaulters and what have you. So I don't know what their thinking was there, other than they possibly didn't know how to judge it, didn't know what to do with it. I just don't know. Because a Yamashita, everybody could do. I mean, it was just who did it better, type of a vault. The Sukahara, you still see some of those today in collegiate gymnastics, and And the male gymnasts, the international elite male gymnasts, a lot of them will do a Sukahara type entry for a vault.
That was a very interesting read. You were quoted after the state meet, "I choked. I didn't do very good. I just didn't have it together." And the state meet's 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you were fourth after in the all-around after the first day, and fell back into sixth overall. I don't think you choked. This isn't me just being your brother, but think about it. It's tough to say you choked when you walked away with the best in the state in the floor routine and sixth overall. That made you a champion and the first champion in a city of champions. So glad that you were able to prevail, and it would have been interesting to see had the flu bug not hit you. And gymnastics probably a little bit of a mental aspect of it too. If things don't quite go right, that you can easily get down or forget.
You can, absolutely, but I believe gymnasts are some of the most mentally tough people that you will ever come across in your lifetime. And I believe that if not for some mental toughness, I probably would not have been able to go out there and perform because I was really sick.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember it just wasn't very good. Mrs. Bombauer made everybody leave my room because a couple people got to go, I believe, from the team, and so that there was some support down on the floor. And so I was in a room all by myself, and I always felt guilty about that. And then I thought, oh, well, maybe that prevented them from getting sick as well. So
probably the MO on that one.
Right.
So you had adversity in the 77 state championship. You make it back to the 78 state championship, again with high expectations, and adversity hit you probably a lot harder in 78 than the flu bug of 77.
It did. And I do want to point out, and maybe you're going to talk about this later, but the whole entire high school gymnastics team went. And I don't think a lot of people even know that either. So that was so exciting to have the team there, some teammates there, and whole different, level of excitement there. But
we've got a neat picture from the evening leader of the teammates that are going, that are on the leaning against the beam.
Oh, okay, good.
And showing who is all going.
Good. It'll be fun to see some of this stuff, like I said, because I haven't seen it in, it feels like 100 years. But so that'll be fun to read some of those articles and look at that. But yes, adversity did strike. I believe, and I think you told me this, that on my warming up for my Sukahara vault, I crunched my ankle. And so back in the day, once again, equipment was not nearly like it is right now. And not making excuses, this is just a fact of what happened. So I don't know if we had the wrong, we called them beat boards. And that's what you ran up and hit, and it helped you elevate you onto the vault. And so the flooring in the gym was very soft. So nowadays, if you watch competitions, you'll see they put boards down, and then they put the board on top of it, because otherwise that soft floor, it absorbs, so you don't get any power off of that board. And that's exactly what happened. And so what did I do? I sprained my ankle badly, and I broke a finger and something else, I believe.
There was a third component.
Yeah, there was
that you
a
were
third
dealing
something.
with. Oh, your knee twisted out.
Oh yeah, so my knee went.
So you persevered the best that you could, because it is a state meet. And
the team was there.
And the team was there, and high expectations all the way around. I think I had read that Coach Bombauer had said probably a stretch to say that the team could win a state title, but perhaps be in the top three is the expectation she had going in. And you compete, and I think you get your vault accomplished, but then you make it to the floor routine. And
well, I think I made it through everything, because I did beam. I think I placed on beam. We have to go back and look, but And I remember, though, I could not do my front aerial because I just felt like I did not have enough strength in my leg, or it was hurting too badly. So I just completely left that out of my beam routine and then got to floor. And I think I did my first tumbling pass, and I just could not go on. Was not physically possible. So that was disappointing.
But you had made it back to the state meet, back to back, the 2 years that you're in high school, and quite commendable. And obviously, as we mentioned several times, you were the first state champion for Memorial High School.
And one thing that you have to remember too, the state meet in gymnastics, and I don't know how it is today. I don't think there's a whole lot of competition in high school, but I don't know that. There was no Division 1, 2, 3. It was you were competing against everybody. So St. Mary's was up against the big Cleveland schools and the big Cincinnati schools and the Columbus schools that had ginormous programs. So,
and speaking of injuries, this has to be a sport that has a lot of injuries. Did you remember many teammates having injuries, or maybe it was just busted up ankles and you rest?
Well, in the private world, yes. I mean, somebody always had a broken something, or a concussion, or.
Did you have any broken bones?
Oh, yes. I had a couple broken ankles, and probably had many concussions, but there was no concussion protocol back in that day. So I just say that's what's wrong with me today.
So all of the hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, hours upon hours of practicing in Dayton, the hour-plus trip down and back, which I was a small child and hated the trip down and back to Dayton, but I remember getting to spend time during the 4+ hours of you practicing, going to Reich's in downtown Dayton, going to the Dayton Mall, going to this park, which I would love to find again, which was high atop a hill, probably somewhere in the Miamisburg area, going to Burger Chef. I loved going to Burger Chef. So my time and commitment was worth something. But Mom and Dad's money, it eventually all paid off because you get to continue on with gymnastics and receive an education for doing so. You graduate in 1978 and you become an Eastern Kentucky colonel. So talk to us about that recruiting process and then competing for Eastern Kentucky.
Okay. So once again, I wasn't sure if I was going to go on and compete, but then had a lot of interest from many colleges, and chose Eastern Kentucky. And maybe I shouldn't say this, but it's because it was 4 hours away, far enough away, but close enough away, or close enough to home, because I got braces my senior year of college, so I had to come home every so often to get all that work done. Or my senior year of high school, I got braces, so I had to come home. And at Eastern Kentucky, we did not have fantastic facilities. In fact, once again, we were pulling out equipment before practice, putting it away. We were practicing on one half of the gym was the field hockey team or the volleyball team. So I believe that's why we became such great beam workers at Eastern Kentucky, because we had a lot of distractions. But once again, I chose Eastern Kentucky because I knew that I could compete in the all-around, but it didn't have to be my everything, that I could, rely on the ability that I had and the hours I had put in, and that I wasn't going to have to work myself to death to make a roster. And so and I loved the campus and still do today. And just real quick, in one fact, one of my greatest, not accomplishments, but things I'm most proud of is, so my senior year, or after my junior year, we learned due to Title IX, and remember this is back in the late 70s, early 80s, women's and men's gymnastics were being cut. And I think our team had to have one of the highest GPAs because we were loaded with smart people, very dedicated, once again, disciplined and committed people, our gymnasts, makeup gymnasts. So men's and women's gymnastics, men's and women's swimming were all cut. So I still had another year of eligibility. I had redshirted 1 year because I broke my wrist, and so I couldn't get back in time to to compete, so we just redshirted, which means I didn't compete my junior year. So I still had another year of eligibility, even though I was a senior. And but anyways, I think most of us, myself and my teammates, we were just in shock that this had happened. And so we all kind of went our separate ways. And I had a chance to go finish out at University of Kentucky, which was just right up the road, a little bit north. And man, I debated and debated. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And, you know, looking back, you're not supposed to have regrets, but I wish I would have.
You could have gone to UK for gymnastics? For
gymnastics to complete my final year. Yes, they were like, come on up, and you can finish, you know, your degree and up here, and I didn't. But so I still have a year of eligibility.
That may come into play at some point in time.
And then I think I totally went away from my whole story, because I do that often. Is 2 years ago, got talking to some of my teammates, and we had not seen each other. Most of us had not seen each other for 30 plus years. You know, Facebook, the beauty of Facebook is finding people that you once knew. And so I put together a reunion, a 35th EKU gymnastics team reunion, and put together some articles and did a book. And that is one of the things that I have enjoyed doing so much. And in fact, we are planning another one on Labor Day this year. So,
good.
So didn't see each other for 35 years. A couple of us randomly saw each other. One of my teammates was in my wedding. So yeah, the ties that you form, even though you don't see each other or communicate, are still there.
Definitely. Alrighty, so there's the story of Memorial High School's first state champion, from starting as a young dancer for Mava and becoming that acrobatic wonder to a collegiate gymnast. And Laura, thank you for being our guest. And we're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to come back with the very exciting Rider Nation Station Word Association game. So we'll be right back after this.
This segment of Rider Nation Station has been brought to you by Albert Sporting Goods at 121 West Spring Street, serving the St. Mary's community since 1980. Plus One Professionals Real Estate, selling St. Mary's from the corner of Spring and Chestnut since 1982.
Thank you to our fine sponsors for bringing Rider Nation Station Word Association Plus One Professionals Albert Sporting Goods. Please stop in to see these fine folks and stay local the best that you can. Tell them thanks for supporting Rider Nation Station. All right, it's Word Association activity time. First thing that pops to your mind, Buchanan's.
Rows and rows of clothes. And the smell. There was a distinct smell when you walked into Buchanan's.
And probably interestingly enough, you've got a shot of Buchanan's right across from where
we're
taping
looking at
right
it
now.
right now. Absolutely.
Priest's shoes.
I remember taking you with Mom to get your first pair of baby shoes at Priest Shoes. Folks, you have to remember Doug is 12 years younger than I am, thus his memories and learning things, because he was not old enough to remember.
Yep. And hopefully you chose wisely with those first shoes.
They were white and they had little bells on them.
Nice. Dr. Hudson.
So I saw Dr. Hudson quite frequently because I was not blessed with good eyesight at all. And at one time I remember there was a rumor that I was going blind. I was not. My eyes just progressively got very, very bad. And so I saw, and I remember him just very, very gentle, not scary.
Mm-hmm. And finally, the St. Mary's Marina.
St. Mary's Marina is where I had my first job ever, and it was the greatest first job ever. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything more wonderful than working at a boat marina by the lake. Fond memories there.
All righty, again, thanks to those sponsors for helping bring Rider Nation Station Word Association activity. Interactive correspondence, any comments or questions you have about today's episode, make certain that you put those in the Facebook or YouTube comment section. or email them to us at writernationstation@gmail.com. Well, we've come to the end of our show. It is our hope at Writer Nation Station that this vodcast did entertain, educate, enlighten, and elevate your perspective about St. Mary's, Ohio. We hope a story has been told that augments the development of relationships, old and new, to promote the growth for all who do, did, and will call St. Mary's, Ohio home. Again, I want to thank Laura Yelton, which I forgot to mention. Numerous times in the articles, you were Lori Yelton.
I was Lori Spencer. Yeah.
And sometimes you were Laura, so interesting who you actually were.
I became Laura in college.
Okay.
Don't ask me why, but I did.
A wonderful walk down memory lane with our athletics component of Writer Nation Station. And next week we will be back with Mike Lynch providing us with the details of the Barry Manilow story here in St. Mary's, Ohio, back in 1975. So please make certain that you like, you follow, you subscribe, you share, and thank you for tuning in. I hope you think positively about our town, the town we did not inherit from our ancestors, but the town we borrowed from our grandchildren. Peace to you, my fellow St. Marians, always and always. Thanks again, Laura. We appreciate it.
This episode of Writer Nation Station has been sponsored by American Manufacturing Solutions, your total logistic partner, investing in the St. Mary's community. Albert Sporting Goods at 121 West Spring Street, serving the St. Mary's community since 1980. Plus One Professionals Real Estate, selling St. Mary's from the corner of Spring and Chestnut since 1982. Minster Bank, helping people achieve financial success and supporter of the Writer Nation and the St. Mary's community. The Evening Leader, chronicling the history of St. Mary's for over 100 years. Like a good neighbor, Laura Yelton, your local State Farm agent, is there.